In today's session, we are going to look at dependent and independent variable. This is a very important aspect. Many students and also young professionals struggle with this concept. What is this dependent and independent variable? It is nothing but y equals f of x. This is an equation that we have studied in our school and college, right? Even if you have not pursued a mathematics or engineering or science oriented stream, I'm sure you would have seen this equation in your 9th standard or 10th standard, irrespective of the board of study. What is this y equals f of x? We are saying that y is dependent on x, or y is a function of x. That is what we are saying when I say y equals f of x. We use this concept in machine learning quite extensively, right? Before getting into where this is applied, where this is used in machine learning, let's understand this concept, right? So, for example, an example that I love to talk about is uh, we study for different times of for preparation. For preparing for an exam, we study for 30 minutes every day, 1 hour every day, 2 hours every day, 4 hours every day. It depends on the students' inclination, students' willingness, students' desire to score marks, right? So, the number of hours a student studies will impact the marks, right? Do you all agree with this? The number of hours a student studies will impact the marks. In this case, marks is the dependent variable or y, and hours is x of the independent variable. I'm sure you all agree, there is absolutely no doubts, right? The number of hours a student studies will influence the number of marks or the grade the student obtains. For this example, let's take number of marks and number of hours. I study for 4 hours, I get 60 marks. I study for 5 hours, I get 70 marks, so on and so forth. It can even be a case where I study more number of hours, I get less marks, right? We will talk about that scenario of inverse relationship in another video, okay? But for now, let's understand that marks you get in an examination is dependent on the number of hours I study. You all agree with this, right? So marks is a function of hours, right? So marks is a function of hours. Marks is dependent on hours, right? Can I say this? Marks is dependent on hours. That is why marks is known as dependent variable, and number of hours studied is independent variable. So marks is y and number of hours studied x is x. Do you understand this? We use this concept quite extensively in the world of machine learning, okay, quite extensively, because for any machine learning problem, the first thing you need to ascertain is what is my dependent variable and what is my independent variable. And please note that the dependent variable will always be 1. This is also known as output variable, right? And this is known as an input variable. You can say that way, right? This is output, this is input. So there can only be one y, but I can have more than one x. That is, y can be a function of x1, x2, x3, so on up to xn, right? The marks I get, I can say that it is dependent on number of hours I study and number of questions I ask in a class, number of questions asked in the class. That shows how involved you are in the class, right? That shows the extent of understanding. So I am saying the number of marks a student obtains is dependent on the number of hours the student studies and the number of questions the student asks in the course of the class, right? So in this case, marks is y and this is x1, x2. So y is a function of x1 and x2. In this case, x1 and x2 are known as independent variables and y is known as dependent variable. Is this clear? This can be can be thought of as input variable and this is an output variable. This is my independent, this is dependent. If you are still having a doubt as to which is dependent, which is independent, ask this question. Is marks dependent on hours or is hours dependent on marks? Right? Marks is dependent on hours, right? That which is dependent is known as the dependent variable and that which influences the output is known as the independent variable. Is this clear? So I can have more than one independent variable but only one dependent variable. Please keep this in your mind. Right? I can have only one dependent variable but I can have more than one independent variable. This is how you study. So for any machine learning, whether it is a classification or regression, the first thing I need to ascertain is what is my dependent variable and what is my independent variable. Are you getting it? So this will determine additional steps, further steps that we do as part of machine learning calculation and programming. So you have to understand this. You can apply this to any scenario. For example, the price of an automobile is dependent on the cc, cubic volume, the volume of the vehicle, brand name, type of vehicle, whether it is an SUV, sedan, right? So on and so forth. So the price of an automobile is dependent on the volume of the vehicle, the brand and the type of the vehicle. In this case, this is my dependent variable. All these are independent variable, right? I can also say that this is output and this is my input. Clear? So this is a very, very basic concept which you must know. Even experienced practitioners sometimes make a mistake. So all I'm suggesting is don't make that mistake. Right?